During 1994, about 4 million women were terrorized and abused by men. As Americans, we witnessed some form of domestic abuse, so we researched Donna Shalala's speech and various articles about domestic abuse. Domestic terrorism in the balance in the United States had the potential to spring up at any given moment, and many women are affected because of it.
Hi, my name is Furkat Ahmedo. This group project is about Donna Shalala domestic terrorism, violence against women. Now, let's begin with speaker's purpose. Speaker's purpose is to protect women who are getting abused from their husband, because this violence are increasing that we don't do anything to solve this. And those women that are getting abused forgives their husband and they ended up being abused and also killed again and again. So we need to act, call police, and teach educators how to solve this. Let's begin with her preview. She does preview her main points. Since a lot of women getting hurt, we need to act by getting educated our young generation and force those doctors to tell police when women getting hurt from her husband, because they don't want to tell, they're afraid of. And police should have more rights to protect those, because she said that a survey last year by the Commonwealth found that 92% of women who were physically abused by their partners did not tell their doctors. Now, if we help them, many lives will be saved, like the state of Virginia did, because they were strict with this law and they started to have more rights for these women, and the violence percentage decreases. So we should do this in all states. Now let's begin with her body. She's body part is well organized, giving examples with so many violent cases, like when kids told to call 911, and when their father beats her mom, she did call, which this is also helpful to teach kids. And she also said that what we do know is that 20 to 30% of the injuries that send women to emergency room stem for the physical abuse by their partners. So now let's begin with the conclusion. Is the conclusion related to her main point? Yes, it begins with the story of the family that being saved. Is the ending line memorable? Of course, the ending line is very memorable, because it's about the story that when the father started to hit his wife, and his daughter called 911 and saved mom's life, and now the father is in prison. In fact, we should teach those young generation, because they'll be helpful for to save their mother's lives and have more rights for the police. Thank you.
One of the most important things to remember while giving a speech is to cite any outside information given from any other source. And Donna Shalala does a very inconsistent job of citing her sources. In some examples, she does cite her sources, but in numerous other examples, she does not. One example of when she did cite her sources is this line. We know that 17% of women interviewed in public prenatal clinics reported being assaulted during pregnancy. She later goes on to say that she asked the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to find out what the percentages were for women being abused during pregnancy. Here is an example later on of when she did not cite her sources. She goes on to say that in this country, domestic violence is just as common as giving birth, about 4 million instances of each. She does not say, however, how she got these numbers or where these numbers came from. Not citing your sources within your speech can cause people to think that your numbers or statements are invalid and untruthful because you do not have reliable sources that can back up those numbers or information that you just gave. And there are, like I said, numerous examples of where she did not cite her sources, but very few examples of where she actually did. Citing your sources in your speech is very important because it can give the inclination to people that you're giving the speech to that your sources are unreputable and untrustworthy. Shalala does not quote anybody or anything in this speech because most of her quote-unquote support are only statistics and random statements in which, again, she does not quote. While what she is saying does support her argument against domestic abuse in the home, she does not have reliable evidence because she does not cite of where she gets her evidence from. For what we know, she could be making up these numbers, and some examples are as follows. The first point being, domestic terrorism is the leading cause of injury to women in our country. Second point, in fact, 1 in 4 women will be assaulted by domestic violence in their lifetime. Third point, and 60% of female homicide victims are killed by somebody they know. Once again, while all these statements do support her argument for domestic violence in the home, she does not give reliable evidence to support her claims because she does not cite of where she gets these sources from.
Donna Shalala was born in Cleveland, Ohio, of Maronite Catholic Lebanese descent, the daughter of Edna Smith and James Abraham Shalala. She has a twin sister, Diane Friddle. She graduated from West Technical High School and received a bachelor's degree in 1962 from Western College for Women, in which 1976 merged with Miami University. She was the Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Madison from 1988 to 1993. She was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, by President George W. Bush in June 2008. Shalala currently serves as the president of the Clinton Foundation. Donna Shalala delivered this speech before the AMA National Conference on Family Violence in Washington, D.C., March 11, 1994. The issue is domestic violence against women. This issue is very much so in effect today. Many women don't speak about it out of fear. Ways we can make change of this action is by noticing the signs of domestic abuse. She was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The stakeholders are those who are experiencing domestic violence. By President George W. Bush. The ones who are on the other side of the issue are the ones doing the abuse. Mainly the men who abuse women are the ones who are in an intimate relationship with them. The audience of this speech were the victims of relationship and family abuse. These members were for what Donna Shalala had to say. She was speaking out and touching those going through this tragedy.
During 1994, President Bill Clinton recently sank deep into sexual assault charges and various affairs. O.J. Simpson was tried for double homicide on accounts of his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her acquaintance, Ron Goldman. The average income in the United States was about $37,000, while the average price of rent was $500. During 1994, the United States was in decent shape. Unemployment rates in the U.S. was about 5.4%, which some cases, years prior to 1994, the unemployment rates was about 7.4%. According to Sinus.gov, approximately 263.1 million people were living in the United States, with the living expectancy to be 75 years and gross domestic product earnings of about $7.3 trillion. The Donna Shalala speech gave more exposure and insight to domestic abuse to the public, such as percentages on how many women are abused yearly or how many women who admit to being abused by their significant other. Post Donna Shalala speech on September 1994 passed a bill of $1.8 billion for Violence Against Women Act. According to Armand A. brought from the Denver Post, the funds will fund toll-free hotlines, battered women's shelters, and education programs. So Donna Shalala's idea was approved and is currently set in motion to support women who are abused by their partners. The speech brought about social change by giving American citizens awareness of domestic abuse and cases involving domestic abuse. With the awareness factors coming to play, the American people are determining signs of domestic abuse and have the initiative to call upon authorities to save those who are victims of it. Because of the various facts that Donna Shalala said in her speech, she brought about the intensity of the problem at the time that was never brought upon and made it to its own caliber and category of offense. Donna Shalala's speech gave awareness to domestic abuse and brought about charities bent on helping survivors and victims of domestic abuse. Donna Shalala's speech was broadcasted on March 11, 1994, on C-SPAN, cable satellite public affairs network, and newspapers such as New York Times, and it was covered on March 16th.
Thank you for listening to our presentation on Donna Shalala's speech about domestic terrorism.